a small town that was unincorporated, was run by Alameda County, and then we became a city in 1982.
It was to say it ourselves, not to have it said for us.
Not too long ago, in the media, it was stated that Dublin would become one of the wealthiest cities in the state of California. And I would like to state to you unequivocally right now that I think Dublin was very wealthy before it ever was a city. Its wealth is in the people that make up its residency. Without those individuals, there would be no direction for the future of this community.
I've never met elected officials like Pete Snyder. I mean, I've met a lot of fine people, but Pete was one of a kind. Pete was the right guy, the right person to be the first mayor. That first group of elected officials, they did not have any other political ambitions that I could see when I was working. Their focus was on Dublin.
The first council was truly part of a citizen council. They truly represented the community. Pete Haggerty was a truck driver who worked for the Port of Oakland. Dave Burton was in real estate. Pete Snyder, who was on the school board, was a car parts salesman. Paul Moffat owned a pharmacy where the Heritage Park is now in the Kolb House. And then Linda Jeffrey, who was in retail and also on the school board. So that was the first council. And they were your neighbors.
I've been involved with the city since just after it was incorporated. Pete Snyder's son and one of my sons played basketball for Dublin High together, and we were over at Amador Alley, and he was about 4 rows up, and he said, "Zika, what are you doing for the city?" We had an opportunity of a lifetime. How many people in their lifetime have an opportunity to almost totally design a city, a total city?
The great thing about Dublin is it is an idea that was recently conceived. 40 years ago, people in the community wanted Dublin to have its own independence as a city, and the founders of the city came together to do that. And they put forward this vision, of a community that has been handed down from each mayor to mayor, from each council to council, and the leaders of the different civic organizations, and so on.
We started as this little turn in the freeway on the way to Santa Rita. We're a little town. Now we're on the map. Back then we were a solid blue collar community, which is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. I was proud of it because we were doing all these wonderful things in a blue collar city.
We were building a city. By the way, it was a community a long time before it was a city. I mean, for over 100 years, it had been a community. So there was a great sense of community there.
I moved to Dublin in 1971 from Oakland. When I would leave for work in the morning and know I wouldn't come back until they were out of school and at home, I felt perfectly secure and safe. I started writing a column for the Valley Times, and I wrote that weekly column for 10 years. And I got so acquainted with people. It was such a perfect working class community. People were hardworking. The buzz around town was that we were going to incorporate, and I was all for it.
I was invited to join the committee for incorporation of Dublin by Dave Burton, member of our church. I did join. Dave insisted that we needed help from all areas, from all cultures, from all races. There were very few Blacks in the area, and none of them had so far volunteered to be a part of the city or to be a part of any leadership.
The short story is, you got a bunch of people who live someplace and are not happy about the services that they're getting from the county and saying, we want better roads, we want better lighting, we want better amenities. And their solution to that was to make a city.
It was to say it ourselves, not to have it said for us.
When election night came, we were so charged up, and we didn't have computers, we didn't have cell phones. We had one phone in the office that we would call the county for the latest numbers. So I had a chalkboard and an eraser, and I had all the candidates' names on the chalkboard. And as the numbers came in, I would record the numbers and then erase and record until we had the final number.
It's like wrapping packages and waiting to open them. That's what it meant for us, was, it was a long time coming and many suggestions on how we were going to grow, how we were going to set our own future. And it was an exciting night.
My first impression, at least from an appearance standpoint, the city needed a lot of work. It had been neglected by the county. The council was really interested in making a difference, changing the people's perception of Dublin. How do we prioritize things? It's a brand new city. Where do you start, right?
A lot of us had really, funny ideas. Mine was that I still think major intersections should be painted green or shamrocks. If you're Dublin, you're going to be Dublin.
Other than the Alameda County supervisor for our district, Don Excel, county administrator's office they were opposed to incorporation for obvious reasons. They were going to lose a large revenue source. We incorporated in February. We had a brand new council in February. And they said, okay, Dublin, do you want to be incorporated? You're on your own on July 1st. You think about it, I had literally no staff, council, me, and we've got to figure out how to get services so that the citizens are not picking up the phone to call for fire or medical or police services.
Richard Emrys was the city manager, City of Dublin, and he had come from the LA area, and the LA area has a lot of contract cities. And so we began to negotiate with the Sheriff's Office, and we were more than happy to provide services to them. We had been patrolling the area. It was listed as unincorporated. So some of my duties before that time frame were to patrol the streets of Dublin.
After the incorporation, we sat down and had to come up with, okay, priority-wise, can't do everything tomorrow, even though most of us wanted to. I wanted a recreation department more than anything. The rest of the council was concerned about finances, which as an accountant, I was too. We talked about the budget and what our priorities needed to be. We had to look to the east and dream about what that would be, one way or another. Again, that started with the Planning Commission, but we had to affirm their decision about how generally the east would be developed.
I was our first planning commissioner. a young man left and went back to, I think he went back to England or something, and I was accepted on the planning commission, late '82. I wanted Dublin to be a better place, not segregated, to be more integrated and to be more accepted. Because at that time, of course, there weren't that many of us, and people didn't want to be involved because of the color line. And it didn't bother me. I've been there and all that good stuff, so it didn't bother me. And I wanted to be that voice for our people in Dublin.
I came into Dublin in '82. I hadn't lived there, but Dublin was really looked down upon by its neighbors. Not only politically, when we were first incorporated, but also from community to community, school to school. And that's one of the reasons we went through we had a unification election, school district election in 1986.
Building up our schools and Dublin High School became very important to the residents in Dublin. The unification, again, a lot of pushback from the county and from neighboring city, but the unification of the school district really helped set the pace for Dublin's development and showing that, yeah, we did have the resources and the ability to govern ourselves and to grow ourselves as a school district and a city. And I am just so proud of where they are now. You know, they've come a long way since the 12,500 residents.
If I were to think about where things were 40 years ago and where things are today, there's not even a comparison. 40 years ago, it was a divided school district. And one of the things that was happening, particularly as we got in the 1980s, was the lack of investment in Dublin High, the lack of concern. So there was a sense in the community that, we needed to have a unified school district. And I think that came directly out of the city's incorporation. Eileen Micheloff's disappearance had a profound impact, I would say, on this community and really the entire Bay Area. Dublin has always been and still is a safe community, but there was never really any worried about where you went, going out and play. You knew, hey, you'll come home. When Eileen Micheloff disappeared, it changed that sense.
It was a very urgent response, and we wanted to make sure we did our best to find her, and sadly we've been unsuccessful. And it's one of those investigations that sticks with you and stays with you forever. It does not go away. We'd like to see a positive resolution to that. There's things that just eat at you, and that really bothers us that we didn't come out with a resolution.
I think it's a testament to our community that it has responded, keeping her name alive each and every year. The march and the vigil, keeping her name out there, keeping her memory out there, and we continue to hope and pray for a miracle.
Growing up in Dublin, some of the community events I'll never forget. Of course, the St. Patrick's Day parade and marching in it as a little leaguer, and then being on the city council and riding on the council float, and then being in Congress in one year being at the front of the parade.
To be able to have the young kids come out and they're excited to see the floats, they're excited to see the fire engines, and the families come out. And it's a family event. And I think for me, family events are extremely important.
Being a place where, when I grew up in the early 90s, we didn't have too much, but we had a community spirit and we had a lot of pride. But when it came to high-paying jobs and good schools. You know, we were always lagging compared to the cities around us, but that's what motivated so many of us. That's what motivated Pete Snyder and Guy Houston and Janet Lockhart and Tim Sobrani. That motivated them to want to invest in Dublin and make it a place where people wanted to put their business, put their kids into school, and come to work as a public servant, as a police officer or a firefighter. And today I'm proud to say that this is one of the greatest cities in America, and that's not just my subjective belief. That bears out when you look at the test scores of our kids, when you look at the number of Fortune 500 companies who are located around here, and when you look at the high-end retail and restaurants who invest here. This is just a great place to live, and it didn't happen overnight, but it happened because we never stopped believing.
I think one of the great things about being a resident of Dublin, especially being the historian in Dublin, is how much the city supports saving the history of Dublin. This goes all the way back to some of the early people in the 1960s who were interested in who was here before, whether it's the Native Americans who were here for tens of thousands of years and lived here, and chose this area because of the water and because of the animal life and because of the climate. And it's gone all the way through incorporation. The city has two major museums, one at the Heritage Park and the other one at Camp Parks.
There's a lot that can be told about the Camp Parks history, the military. There's a museum out front that a lot of people don't know about, that museum captures so much of that history. You know, when people are walking around Emerald Glen, a lot of people don't realize that was part of Camp Shoemaker. There was a hospital there.
It's important because it's part of our history. It's also important because here in the Bay Area, there just aren't enough examples of showing support for America's military. And because it's part of our DNA, part of our history, it's important to show part of our history, but important to show America's military that we care, we value, and we thank them.
We were really happy to have support by the Army and support by the City of Dublin to put together a very interesting self-guided set of exhibits right outside the main gate at Camp Parks. So I would suggest everybody go see it. It's very fun, it's free, and it is a good reflection on the relationship that Dublin has had with the military all the way back to 1942. I recently had an interview with the original city manager, and he talked about how the philosophy at Dublin at incorporation was all about a lean, mean, effective city. And when it came time to build the first city hall, he wasn't really in favor of anything big.
They said, you know, we got to get out of these rented offices and get our own city hall. They said, why don't you come up with some ideas in terms of what we needed? So I spent some time, you know, trying to evaluate kind of where we were headed and so on. And I came back to them, I said, I think we need about a 10,000 square foot building. They go, no. You don't get it, Mr. City Manager. You need to think a lot bigger. So we ended up with the Civic Center that we have today. We walked from, I don't know whether it's Wheelworks now or whatever, but the little building there at the two-story office building, we walked from there to the new Civic Center in 1989.
Again, that is something else to be proud of. When we built that, and you know, it was so beautiful and so big, and people wondered, why did we need that much space? And we outgrew it, and we had to put the police department in another building.
Civic Center was, and probably still is, the envy of most of the cities around here because of its unique design.
The growth of Dublin has its wonderful sides, of course, with revenue and convenience for the residents. The downside, of course, is there's more traffic.
Dublin is a well-planned community, and the growth that you see was all planned in the 1990s. And every square inch had a plan. And when a vacant piece of land fills up with what was planned, people think of that sometimes as, oh my gosh, what are we doing? People that have moved into the community weren't part of building that plan. They might not have understood what the whole plan looked like when they moved here in the 2000s, when the plan was set in 1995.
Most of my tenure as mayor was in developing East Dublin and laying the groundwork with all the roads, the infrastructure, the water and the sewer and the roads and everything that goes along with it. That's one of the things that I ran on, was economic development and business and making sure that the city financially is going to be secure in the future. We focus mostly on how we can improve our local economy and jobs, and you know, it's kind of progressed as we went from there.
When the Eastern Dublin Specific Plan was established, the idea was to provide a balanced community. I didn't look at unit counts. I looked at saying, what opportunities are we providing? So we wanted to make sure that we provided housing for, you know, my generation essentially, to be able to come in to raise their families here just like their parents had. But then when you built out housing, you also wanted to make sure you built out everything else.
And if it takes you a couple minutes longer at a stoplight to know that somebody has a safe home that they might not have had because you have affordable housing in your community, you have workforce housing. So the person that does your nails doesn't have to drive over the Altamont every night to get home. Can go around the corner and live in an apartment and be comfortable and warm. That should mean something. It meant something to the five of us on the different councils I served on. It meant a lot to us that our seniors didn't have to leave Dublin because there was a place for them. There's something they could afford and something they could enjoy.
There are some people who are critical of growth, you know, and they'll say, well, why are we building so much? And one of the things I always say is, I understand that perspective, but over time that growth has paid for the Dublin Library. It's paid for the Dublin Senior Center. It's paid for rebuilding the Shannon Center. That growth funded that brand new school that gave your son or daughter some of the best science labs, some of the best academic opportunities, and clean, new, modern facilities with the best technology.
So money isn't everything, but it sure does help when you want to get things done. And that's why when something happens in Dublin, we have the resources to take care of it. And it all comes from having a strong sales tax base and a strong property tax base.
It has been an absolute home run grand slam for the City of Dublin. We're at the crossroads of 580 and 680. Much like Walnut Creek, the growth is going to happen at the crossroads of those freeways.
We had a lot of battles with our neighbors and with the county over those growth issues in those early years. For whatever reason, Livermore and Pleasanton wanted to keep us small while they grew. I never understood that. And they tried every means to limit the city's growth.
You know, you stop a tree from growing, you kill it. You're going to stop a city from growing, you're going to kill it. I'm very proud to say I'm from Dublin.
BART was a huge success at coming to Dublin. And again, Pete Snyder, our first mayor, was largely responsible for getting BART to come out to the community.
He insisted that Dublin have 2 stations. And he fought that all the way. And finally, they said, okay, we will put in the Eastern Dublin station, Dublin Pleasant Station, and we'll make the infrastructure so that we can build a Western station in the future. So, and we now have a Western Dublin Pleasanton station. So that was really foresight of Pete.
I think Dublin's been blessed with some wonderful businesses that have stuck it out. Look how many have been there for 30, 40 years, you know, through good times and bad times.
Dublin is business friendly. It's in our DNA. We welcome businesses with open arms. We have a strong Chamber of Commerce. We have a strong economic development team here at the city management.
A lot of big business understood who we were, and they came to Dublin because of who we were. We were a city that wasn't afraid to be progressive. We were a city that honored business being in our community. I had a great working relationship with the business community. I know Guy Houston did. He's the one that attracted so many of the big companies. They liked him. He was young. He was progressive.
Dublin has always been very successful with their businesses, even back in those days. But there was no there. And so, that's something that we've changed over the last 25 years. But it was a much sleepier place than it was today.
He was interested in helping them succeed. And I think it's a balancing act you have to do between helping business and underwriting business. There's a difference. And while we made everybody pull their own, we certainly were pleased when they succeeded. Albertino and Discovery Homes, we wouldn't have School of Imagination without them. But that school has become such a focal point, and it's so well known that, it's just one more thing for Dublin to be proud of.
When I became mayor in November of 2008, it was right at the start of the Great Recession when it was hitting us the worst. And we had commercial vacancies, so much so that news crews were coming out to Dublin all the time, showing whole shopping centers that were completely vacant. And now they've been, completely reoccupied.
When I ran for Congress, I ran on Dublin. Dublin was the centerpiece of my campaign, which was that if you invest in economic opportunity, that you will see positive growth. And I'm so proud that during the economic recession, of 2008, 2009, that Dublin did not stop investing. We did not have massive layoffs. We did not run, a deficit like many cities were around us. We were responsible with our money because we had made a diversity of investments.
When you talk about the great businesses that we have, you also have to mention the wonderful service organizations that we have. Dublin residents have compassion and they give back and they volunteer their time and they help others. That's what the Dublin Rotary is all about, the Lions Club, the Women's Club, the guys at the St. Raymond's Knights of Columbus, and dozens of other organizations. People want to give back and they serve and they volunteer.
There was a lot of sadness. I went to his funeral, and I don't cry a lot, but they had to fly over with 5 helicopters when they buried him and all, and that was kind of tough. That's where the current sheriff made his chops. He was a sergeant out here at the time, and he was the one that came on the scene after it all happened.
So we got a phone call, the house phone rang, and they told me that John had been murdered. And I can remember sitting on the side of my bed in disbelief. I couldn't believe it occurred. I asked, what happened? How did it happen? And they told me he got shot and killed at the Outback Steakhouse. And they needed me to respond. And so I knew I had to get myself together and respond as quickly as possible. The suspect still had not yet been apprehended.
Worst day of my life.
Please tell me a little more.
I was like I said, worst day of my life. When Officer Monaco was killed.
The toughness was experienced immediately. And we saw, all of us got together and said, we have to make sure we do everything perfect to make sure that we have a investigation that allows for us to have the people responsible for this be held to justice. Remarkable to see how many people were willing to go an extra mile just to make sure that we had everything we needed.
I think it's kind of the one of the reasons why Dublin's Dublin, and the people here that are so special is that they do remember, they do care.
I mentioned the tragedy of Eileen. The tragedy there was because she was so young, taken from us without notice. But then here you had a young father, public safety, an officer in this community who was loved and respected. That was also a really, really hard day in this city. And it's a testament to Dublin Police Services that they keep his memory alive. It was one of the reasons we built the Public Safety Memorial.
A young man named Sekou Turner, who was a firefighter, who died of a heart attack while carrying a heart attack victim to an ambulance in Dublin. Attended his funeral services as well, representing Dublin. And those kinds of losses you don't forget.
I had the privilege of being a recruit classmate with Sekou Turner. We got hired together in July of 2001, and we went through a 5-month academy together. When you lose a fellow firefighter, I don't think anyone ever expects that, and it's something that is unsettling, and you really try to look at how we can best respect your fellow firefighter and give them the honor and the tribute that they deserve. We still recognize Sekou on May 22nd. Each year here at Station 16, we have a plaque that memorializes Sekou, and we actually have a Sekou Turner Award, which is given to our recruit each year that displays the character, the ethics, and the personality that Sekou contributed to the fire department. And this is a peer-based nomination to best illustrate by the fellow recruits who they believe deserves the Sekou Turner Award. For me, Sekou will always be a part of my life. Being in the recruit class with Sekou and seeing Sekou, these memories come in and out, but I do remember coming in and relieving him from a call or from work the next morning, and they had a structure fire, and I'll just never forget the smile that I saw on his face when we exchanged in the morning and said that he had a fire and he went in and put out the fire, and just sort of that fulfillment of his career of being a firefighter and doing that will never escape my memory. And those are the type of moments that you really see the importance of being a close-knit fire department and leaning on one another to do what you really love doing, and that's being a firefighter. And I know that I could tell you that Sekou loved being a firefighter.
Deputy Audrey Phillips was on patrol. She made a traffic enforcement stop, took a female into custody while she was processing that work at the driver's wheel. She suffered a brain bleed, and our units responded and did what they could to try to save her life. They were able to get her to the hospital with the assistance of the medical response team, but sadly, she passed away from that brain bleed.
It does affect you differently with knowing her husband works at the same duty station. He's a member of our sheriff's office. The friends, the love and respect she had from her partners, it was traumatically sad. I can't even express to you. Then when we meet the family and meet the children, I was the supervisor of her father. And so I know him very, very well, and he has been retired for some time. And to watch him go through seeing his daughter die, and no parent should ever have to
If you look at Dublin's history, you had a group of dedicated, committed community servants who had helped found the city, who had helped, build the early years of the city, help plan for the future by developing the Eastern Dublin specific plan. But I saw it as a time for a new generation of leaders to come in to help implement that plan. So I really saw a responsibility and an opportunity to lend my vision, my experiences as someone who had grown up here, who had a sense of the past, but also, hopefully an eye to the future of what we were looking to become. When I was growing up in Dublin, Dublin was mostly a bedroom community. People commuted out of Dublin. What we always sought to do was let's have people commuting into Dublin. The Dublin BART station, when that gets built, it's a two-way station. And I love that today you see people getting off the train in Dublin, not just getting on the trains to go somewhere else. I think Dublin, has blue-collar roots that you never want to lose, but I think you've also seen the professional growth in terms of a lot of the jobs as well. When I think about what I'm most proud of in the city of Dublin, when I think about my time as a council member and as a mayor, I think it's the public facilities that we built. The Dublin Library, the Shannon Community Center, the Dublin Senior Center.
Involvement with Dublin seniors was fun. I was on the Senior Center Committee a long time, and to see how friendships grow because people want to be near people, and the center allowed them that opportunity to be together without any attachments. They could be in the lunchroom, they could be in the living room, as we called it at that time, but they could be outside. They could just be and not be discriminated against because they're older or they're different. And a lot of people formed relationships with different cultures that they would not have if they had not had that opportunity to just be together.
It's nice to sit down and talk to somebody and have a cup of coffee facing somebody. Yeah, I can do that on Zoom. I can do that, with talking to somebody on the phone, but sometimes you just got to be face to face. And the Senior Center offers that.
One of the things that we did was develop an ordinance of community benefit. So anybody that came to our town that wanted to make money and develop in our community had to provide a community benefit. We got the Heritage Park because Berkeley Farms had an old shopping center and they wanted to knock down their shopping center and put up an office building. And we said, wait a minute, that's a really important piece of land in our history. This land is precious to us.
And I actually pinned the letter to Diane Lowert at the time as president of DHPA that we all agreed we were going to give the city the house. They were going to maintain it. That was our goal. It needed to be maintained. Okay, so that started that. And then the issue of the church came up. And then one day, Carol Kolb called and said, do you think it's ever possible that my family's ranch will be back in Dublin? Of course, the first thing that came to mind is no, we're never going to get a city limit on that site. Well, their ranch was on the other side of the freeway. And when Pleasanton incorporated to build Stone Ridge, they took the city limits to the Dublin side of the freeway. It doesn't matter who we ask, we're never going to get a city limit on that side. I'm really sorry. Well, how about if we moved them? Ding!
So we brought it over the overpass. Pleasanton worked with us. And we brought that home and those barns back over the overpass and set them up on Dublin land.
I still have pictures of that night. The night it happened, oop, there it goes. Carol and I stood on the corner of Dublin Boulevard and San Ramon Road, and watched her grandpa's house make the turn. It just was so incredible. I mean, we never thought in 100 million years that we'd get any of those old properties back in Dublin.
Dublin's known for its parks for good reason. From Fallon Sports Park, where we have competitive tournaments, to Emerald Glen Community Park, where we have something for everybody. And then we have the All Abilities Playground, a place where people that are wheelchair bound or otherwise severely physically challenged can come and play alongside their childhood friends. The Don Biddle Community Park that's along Dublin Boulevard is going to be absolutely amazing.
So for all the people that missed the opportunity that we're not able to meet, our beloved Don Biddle, our vice mayor, he was a great man. He took me under his wing. He wanted to make sure that he showed me the ropes. He was a man that was solid, had so much integrity, and was an individual that would speak his mind, even if it wasn't a popular decision that he had to make. He wanted to make sure he made the best decision for the city of Dublin. And he left us too soon. I wish that he was still on council. Great man and a great individual.
The other interesting thing about Dublin and structures, if you will, is that Dublin has a very exciting collection of modern art in the sculptures that are all around.
My passion was art and public art in Dublin. We didn't have any, and it just beautifies the landscape. It may be different, it may be something you don't recognize, but you can always find something there in art. I think it enhances Dublin, and certainly it has enhanced the art community in Dublin. We now have a thriving art community that's been born from that, from the fact that there's public art out there, that people appreciate it and love it.
To me, art is an expression of the soul, and I wanted the soul of Dublin to show through.
I saw one of my dreams come true when the council agreed to make a cultural arts center out of the old space that belonged to the police department.
I think the most telling thing about Dublin residents and art is that doesn't get destroyed. People don't graffiti.
One of my favorite things about Dublin is the diversity of people. This place is so much more diverse than when I graduated Dublin High School in 1999. And you go to Dublin High School today and you'll see the number of different ethnicities and religious backgrounds that the students bring. And it's exciting. And immigrants create economic growth. When people leave their countries, everything they had behind, and they come to America, those are resilient people, and they're coming to Dublin.
There's so much each culture has to offer, and it just makes it an all-around city. The schools can teach a lot of things that they didn't teach before because they have different cultures there now. The teachers are of different cultures, and diversity makes things change. It makes things better, I think.
I also think one of the things that Dublin is really distinctive on, when you look at a place like, the Olford Center or some of the independently owned, diverse cuisine, diverse eating options, you don't find the diversity of those types of options anywhere in the Tri-Valley. For any type of palate, Dublin has something for you.
Being elected as the first Latina mayor is an accomplishment for me personally, but I know that my parents worked so hard to be able to educate us, to be able to say that you have to be able to fight for what you want, to be the voice, not to only just be the voice for women, but to be the voice for Latinos, to be the voice for so many individuals that had their parents working in the tomato fields and waking up really early in the morning and knowing that my parents gave me this opportunity because they worked so hard that they wanted to make sure that each one of their kids had all the opportunities that they did not have.
The early days of the pandemic are vivid in my memory because it was St. Patrick's Day weekend, the biggest weekend in Dublin. And we had to cancel the parade. We had to tell the delegation of our sister city from Ireland that had just landed that we're going to have to go to Plan B.
We always were a city that always wanted to make sure that we put money away for a rainy day. We thought for sure there'd be another recession. We did not think there would be a pandemic.
I can just say that I was proud to be a leader at that time. We did our role, but staff really made it work.
I'm very proud of our residents. We accomplished at 92% vaccination rates when it was possible. We wore a mask when we needed to. So I really am proud to have been the mayor during very difficult times, because not only do you learn from those difficult times, but it also makes you a stronger mayor. Our City of Dublin was one of the cities in the Tri-Valley was able to give our small businesses, our residents, and our community the funding that we needed to provide to them during these very difficult times. Not many cities were able or were in that position to be able to help their residents or to be able to help their businesses. We provide so many programs, but we really couldn't do it without our staff and the vision that our staff also has to be able to create these great programs, for us to be able to have the funding to provide the programs, for us to be able to have the contracts with, you know, the person that wants to teach our kids how to dance, teach our kids how to cook, teach our kids how to have the hands-on cultural arts. And so all those things come together from having a well-run city.
I think Dublin has something for everyone. I think first and foremost, you know, we talk about this being the new American backyard, and I really believe it is. I mean, we're a diverse community. We're a safe community. We're a community with great schools. You know, so for families that are looking for high-performing schools and excellent facilities, we have that. If you're someone that's looking for outstanding parks or recreational amenities like the Wave, the Aquatic Center, we have that. If you're looking for work, we have virtually every industry that you can imagine under the sun here in the community of Dublin.
It definitely does fill me with joy to think of where we've come. You know, 57 years ago when I moved here, we had 7,000 people. And what have we got today? 70? But it's good. It's all good.
At the end of the day, I could talk about facilities, talk about all these different things, but it's really the people that are the heart of this community. That was true 40 years ago. That was true 20 years ago. That's true today. And I'd say even today, an added blessing is you see such increased diversity in our community from so many, from really, we become a global community.
We learn so much from each other in our different cultures that we share with one another, that we're able to bring those perspectives to our children. My daughter and my son have had the ability to grow up in a community where there was so much diversity, and they love it. They enjoy Dublin. And again, there's so many people that want to live here so that they can experience that rich culture of diversity.